Pinewood was a town that prided itself on its tranquility. Nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, it was the kind of place where neighbors knew each other by name, and children played freely in the streets. But that peace was shattered one fateful summer when a series of bank robberies struck like a thunderstorm, leaving the community gripped by fear. The criminal behind these audacious heists was dubbed the Phantom by the local media, a name that sent chills down the spines of residents. He was a master of disguise, slipping in and out of the banks with an eerie grace, leaving no trace behind. Each robbery was executed with precision, and the police were left scrambling for clues. My team and I, part of the Pinewood Police Department, were determined to put an end to his reign of terror. As the days turned into weeks, we found ourselves buried under mountains of surveillance footage. Each grainy image was scrutinized, every detail analyzed. I remember one late night, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead as we gathered around a table strewn with coffee cups and notepads. My partner, Officer Lisa Nguyen, leaned in closer to the screen, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a figure in a dark hoodie. "He always seems to know when the cameras are off." We began to piece together a profile of the Phantom. He was meticulous, always choosing his targets carefully, and it became clear that he had an intimate knowledge of the bank's security systems. The more we learned, the more we realized how elusive he truly was. It was as if he thrived on the thrill of the chase, taunting us with his cleverness. Then, one evening, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the town, we received a tip that would change everything. A local resident had spotted a suspicious figure lurking near the old mill on the outskirts of Pinewood. The mill had been abandoned for years, a relic of a bygone era, and it was the perfect hideout for someone trying to evade capture. With adrenaline coursing through our veins, we quickly assembled a team. We knew this could be our chance to finally catch the Phantom. As we drove to the mill, the air was thick with anticipation. I could feel the weight of the community's fear on my shoulders. They were counting on us to restore their sense of safety. Upon arriving, we set up a perimeter, ensuring that no one could slip away unnoticed. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the dilapidated structure. We waited in silence, the only sounds being the rustling leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. Time seemed to stretch as we held our breath, each minute feeling like an eternity. As dawn began to break, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, we spotted movement. A figure emerged from the shadows, clutching a bag that bulged ominously. My heart raced as I signaled to my team. "That's him," I whispered urgently. The Phantom was trying to escape, and we had to act fast. With a swift motion, we moved in, our footsteps muffled by the soft earth beneath us. The chase was on, and as we sprinted through the woods, adrenaline surged through my veins. The trees blurred past us, and I could hear the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. This was it, the moment we had been waiting for. But the Phantom was quick, darting through the underbrush with an agility that was almost supernatural. I could see him glancing back, a flash of panic in his eyes as he realized we were closing in. The chase led us to the riverbank, where the water rushed by, a stark contrast to the tension in the air. We had him cornered. The Phantom was finally within our grasp, and as I prepared to make the arrest, I felt a surge of hope. The town of Pinewood could finally breathe easy again. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a much larger story, one that would test our resolve and challenge everything we thought we knew about the criminal mind. As I stood there, heart racing and determination burning in my chest, I knew that the next chapter of this pursuit was about to unfold. The riverbank was a chaotic scene, the sound of rushing water mingling with the pounding of my heart. The Phantom, realizing he was trapped, turned to face us, his eyes darting between the escape route behind him and the officers closing in. I could see the desperation etched on his face, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy. But I quickly pushed that thought aside. He had terrorized our town for too long. "Stop! Police!" I shouted, my voice cutting through the morning air. The Phantom hesitated, just for a moment, and that was all the time we needed. My partner, Lisa, and I moved in closer, flanking him on either side. The other officers were positioned behind us, ready to assist if he tried to make a break for it. He took a step back, his foot slipping on the muddy bank. I could see the bag of cash he had stolen, bulging and heavy, and I knew that whatever was inside it was worth the risk he was taking. "You don't have to do this," I said, trying to reason with him. Just give up, and we can sort this out." But the Phantom wasn't interested in negotiation. With a sudden burst of energy, he lunged toward the water, clearly hoping to escape by swimming across the river. I reacted instinctively, lunging forward to grab him. My hand caught the back of his hoodie, and for a brief moment I felt the fabric slip through my fingers as he twisted away. "Get him!" I yelled, and the other officers surged forward. The chase was on again, but this time it was a race against the current. The Phantom was fast, but the muddy bank was treacherous, and I could see him struggling to maintain his footing. As he reached the water's edge, I could see the determination in his eyes. He was willing to risk everything to escape. I pushed myself harder, my legs burning as I sprinted after him. Just as he was about to dive into the river, I lunged again, this time managing to grab his arm. We both tumbled to the ground, splashing into the shallow water. The cold hit me like a shockwave, but I didn't let go. "You're not getting away," I shouted, wrestling him back toward the bank. The other officers quickly joined, and together we managed to pin him down, the weight of our combined efforts finally overwhelming him. Breathless and soaked, I looked down at the Phantom, who was now struggling against our grip. "It's over," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "You're under arrest." As we cuffed him and pulled him to his feet, I couldn't help but feel a mix of triumph and relief. The chase had been intense, but we had finally caught him. The townspeople would no longer have to live in fear of his next move. But as we led him away from the riverbank, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story than met the eye. The Phantom had been clever, and I knew that his capture was just the beginning. Back at the station, the atmosphere was electric. Officers gathered around, eager to hear the details of the capture. I could see the relief on their faces, but I also sensed an undercurrent of curiosity. Who was this man, really? What drove him to commit such brazen crimes? As we processed the Phantom, whose real name turned out to be Marcus Hale, I couldn't help but notice the calmness in his demeanor. He was no longer the frantic criminal we had chased through the woods. Instead, he seemed almost resigned to his fate. I wondered what thoughts were racing through his mind as he sat in the interrogation room, waiting for us to confront him. Lisa and I entered the room, and I could feel the tension in the air. "Marcus," I began, trying to keep my tone neutral. "We have a lot of questions for you. But first, let's talk about the robberies." He looked up at us, his expression unreadable. "You think you know me," he replied, a hint of a smirk playing on his lips. "You have no idea what I've been through." I leaned in closer, intrigued. "Then tell us. Why Pinewood? Why the banks?" He paused, as if weighing his words carefully. "I didn't choose Pinewood. It chose me. I was just trying to survive." His voice was steady, but there was a vulnerability beneath the bravado. As the interrogation continued, Marcus revealed snippets of his life, how he had fallen into a cycle of crime after losing his job, how desperation had driven him to make choices he never thought he would make. He spoke of a broken family, of debts that piled up like mountains, and of a society that had turned its back on him. Each revelation peeled back layers of the man we had labeled as a criminal, revealing a story of hardship and survival. "Look, I didn't want to hurt anyone," he said, his voice tinged with frustration. "I just needed the money. The banks are insured, they'll be fine. But me, I'm just trying to get by." I exchanged a glance with Lisa, who was taking notes, her brow furrowed in thought. It was a familiar narrative, one we had heard before, but there was something different about Marcus. He wasn't just a faceless criminal. He was a man who had made desperate choices in desperate times. "Marcus," I said, trying to steer the conversation back to the facts. "You're facing serious charges. But if you cooperate, it might help your case. Tell us about your accomplices. We know you didn't act alone." He hesitated, his eyes darting away. "I didn't have any accomplices. I did this on my own. I thought I could handle it." I could sense the truth in his words, but I also knew that he was hiding something. There was a glimmer of fear in his eyes, a fear of implicating others, or perhaps a fear of revealing too much about himself. "Marcus, we can help you," I urged. "But you need to be honest with us. If there's more to this story, we need to know." After a long silence, he finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. There's a reason I'm called the Phantom. I'm not just a thief, I'm a ghost. I've been living in the shadows for years, and I don't want to drag anyone else into my mess." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I could see the internal struggle within him, the battle between self-preservation and the desire to unburden himself. "Marcus," I said gently, "you're not alone anymore. You have a chance to turn this around. Help us understand what you've been through, and maybe we can find a way to help you." He looked up, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of hope in his eyes. "I just wanted to be free," he admitted, his voice cracking. "But I've been running for so long, I forgot what that felt like." As the interrogation continued, I realized that this was more than just a case of theft. It was a complex web of desperation, choices, and consequences. Marcus was a product of his environment, and while his actions were inexcusable, they were also a reflection of a larger societal issue. As the hours passed, the interrogation room transformed from a place of confrontation to a space of understanding. Marcus began to open up about his life, sharing stories of his childhood, his dreams, and the crushing weight of his failures. Each word painted a picture of a man who had once been full of potential but had been pushed to the brink by circumstances beyond his control. "I used to want to be an artist," he confessed, his voice tinged with nostalgia. "I had a talent for painting, but life got in the way. Bills piled up, and I had to make a choice, art or survival. I chose survival, but I lost myself in the process." I listened intently, realizing that Marcus's story was not just about crime. It was about the struggle to find one's identity in a world that often feels unforgiving. "What if you could find a way back to that artist?" I asked, hoping to inspire a glimmer of hope. "What if you could use your skills to create something positive?" He looked at me, a mixture of skepticism and curiosity in his eyes. "You think I can just paint my way out of this?" "No," I replied firmly. "But I believe that everyone deserves a second chance. You have the opportunity to turn your life around, to use your experiences to help others who might be in the same situation." As the conversation deepened, I could see the walls around Marcus beginning to crumble. He started to share more about the people he had met during his time on the streets, the friends he had lost to addiction, and the dreams that had slipped through his fingers. "I never wanted to be a criminal," he said, his voice breaking. "I just wanted to be free. But every time I tried to escape, I found myself pulled back in. With each revelation, I felt a growing sense of responsibility. This wasn't just about catching a criminal. It was about understanding the root causes of crime and finding ways to address them. I knew that the justice system often focused solely on punishment, but I believed there had to be a way to incorporate rehabilitation into the process. If we could help Marcus find a path back to his true self, perhaps we could prevent him from becoming a repeat offender. "Marcus," I said, leaning forward, "what if we could connect you with resources? There are programs that help people like you, people who want to change but don't know how. You could use your story to inspire others." He looked at me, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. "You really think anyone would care about what I have to say? I'm just a thief." "You're more than that," I insisted. "You're a survivor. You've faced challenges that many people can't even imagine. Your experiences could help others who feel trapped, just like you did." For the first time, I saw a spark of interest in his expression. "You think I could really make a difference?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know you can," I replied, feeling a surge of conviction. "But it starts with you taking responsibility for your actions. You have to be willing to face the consequences of what you've done, but that doesn't mean you can't also seek redemption." As the conversation continued, I could sense a shift in Marcus. He was beginning to see the possibility of a different future, one where he could reclaim his identity and use his past to help others. It was a long road ahead, but the first step was acknowledging the pain and the choices that had led him to this moment. After hours of discussion, we wrapped up the interrogation. I could see that Marcus was exhausted but also relieved. "Thank you for listening," he said quietly, his voice filled with sincerity. "I didn't expect anyone to care." As I left the room, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I knew that the road to recovery wouldn't be easy for Marcus, but I was determined to help him navigate it. I gathered my team and shared my insights, emphasizing the importance of rehabilitation alongside justice. "Let's not just treat this as a case," I urged. Let's see it as an opportunity to make a difference. We can work with local organizations to provide support for Marcus and others like him. If we can help him find a way to contribute positively to society, we might just change the narrative." The officers nodded, some looking skeptical but others inspired. It was a challenge, but I believed in the potential for change.